everybody? It's your boy Trilly, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my 1983 to 84 season completely accurate roster that I made. As you can see, it has 1,529 downloads, and I think it's doing pretty good. Now, of course, things could be subject to change, but I doubt I'm going to change any of it. But going into it and looking at it, I have it right here still. You can see I've fully created all the players that weren't in the game. I also adjusted overalls. So like the 76ers, for example, we have Moses Malone at a 96, Julius Erving at a 93, Andrew Tooney, who's at a 86, who I did have to create. For some reason, he's not in 2K. We have Maurice Cheeks, Bobby Jones, and Sam Williams. And of course, like after Bobby Jones and Maurice Cheeks, the team kind of drops off. But we have Wes Matthews, Clint Richardson, Mark Ivoroni, Franklin Edwards. We have Clement Johnson, Leo Rottens, Sadale Threat, Charles Jones, and Bruce Kaczynski. Now, you might be thinking like, oh, some of these guys don't look exactly like how they should. Some of these guys were in 2K, which saves me a lot of time. I just had to overall adjust. But like Leo Rottens, I'm not on PC. I'm on PS5, of course. So I cannot accurately make faces completely, but I do try my best to create them somewhat realistic. For the Bucks, we have Sidney Moncrief, Marquise Johnson, Junior Bridgman, Paul Pressey, and Bob Lanier kind of as their big five. After that, it kind of drops off with Mike Dunleavy Sr., Alton Lister, Lorenzo Ramar, Nate Archibald, Paul Mokeski, Kevin Gravy, Charlie Cross, or Chris, and then Randy Brewer with Harvey Catchings and Linton Towns. And then going over to the Washington Bullets, we have Jeff Rowland, Ricky Sobers, Greg Ballard, Frankie Johnson, Rick Mahorn, Darren Day, young rookie Jeff Malone. We have Charles Davis, Tom McMillan, Joe Kapicki, Dwayne Scales, Brian Warwick, and Mike Gibson with Mike Wilson at the lower end. And yes, this is a real player. He just wasn't good, so he's a 59 overall. Next up is the Chicago Bulls, led by Orlando Woolridge, Quinton Daly, Ennis Watley, Reggie Theus, Mitchell Wiggins, Dave Corzin, Dave Greenwood, Rod Higgins, Sidney Green, Wallace Bryant, Joanne Oldham, Ronnie Lester, and that's it. And then, as you can see, some of these teams don't have all players, but at the end of the day, that's how much players they had on their teams. Cleveland Cavaliers, we have World B. Free, Cliff Robinson, and John Bagley as their 80s, with Geoff Houston and Lonnie Shelton coming in at 79s. But then it kind of falls off with Roy Hinson, Phil Hubbard, Paul Thompson, Jeff Cook, Stuart Granger, John Garris, Ben Poquette, Geoff Crompton, and that rounds out the Cleveland Cavaliers. Next up, the Boston Celtics, one of the most dominant teams. We got Larry Bird here coming in at 97 with Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, who will come off the bench as the sixth man. He is forced to come off the bench. You could, of course, always change that by going to edit player. But then we got Dennis Johnson, Cedric Maxwell, Gerald Henderson, Danny Ainge, Scott Wedman, Quinn Buckner, ML Carr, Carlos Clark, Greg Kite. Okay. Going on to the San Diego Clippers, we have Terry Cummings at an 83, Norm Nixon, Bill Walton, James Donaldson, Mike Brooks, Derek Smith, Ricky Pierce, Craig Hodges, Greg Kessler, Jerome Whitehead, I said Kessler, I meant Kelser, Hank McDowell, Billy McKinney, and Hutch Jones. Then we have the Atlanta Hawks with Dan Roundfield, who was a really solid player. He wasn't in the game, so I had to create him. And I would have said he would have been a better player as young Dominique was when he first came out. But we got rookie Doc Rivers here as well. Trey Rowlands, Sly Williams, Johnny Davis, Mike Glenn, Randy Whitman, Scott Hastings, John Pannone, Ricky Brown, Armand Hill, and Billy Poltz. Next up is the Utah Jazz, led by 90 overall Adrian Dantley, with Ricky Green, Daryl Griffith, Mark Eaton, John Drew, rookie Thurl Bailey, Jeff Wilkins, Jerry Eves, Rich Kelly, Tommy Boswell, J.J. Anderson, and Bob Hansen. Then we got the Kansas City Kings, led by Eddie Johnson, We got Larry Drew, Mike Woodson, Billy Knight, Josie Merriweather, LaSalle Thompson, Steve Johnson, Kevin Lauder, Mark Olderdine, Don Buse, Dan Suttle, Ed Neely, and Larry, and I don't even know how to say his last name. We have the New York Knicks led by Bernard King, Bill Cartwright, Rory Sparrow, Ray Williams, Darrell Walker, Trent Tucker, Truck Robinson, Lewis Orr, Marvin Webster, Ernie Grunfield, Rudy Macklin, Eric Fernstein, Len Elmore. Then we have the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, with prime Magic Johnson, who's a 96 overall, Older Cream, who's still a 94. We have young James Worthy at 83, Michael Cooper at 83, and Bob McAdoo at 82, with Jamal Wilkes at 81. Then we have people like Byron Scott here, Mike McGee, Larry Spriggs, Kurt Rambis, Swen Nader, Mitch Kupchak, Calvin Garrett, Eddie Jordan, and that rounds out the Lakers. Then we have the Dallas Mavericks with Mark Aguirre at a 94, Orlando Blackman, Pat Cummings, Brad Davis, Jay Vincent, Dale Ellis, Derek Harper, Kurt Nymphius, Bill Garnett, Jim Spanarkel, Roger Fegley, Mark West, and last but not least, Elston Turner. Following that, with the Nets, we have Buck Williams, Daryl Dawkins, Michael Ray Richardson, Otis Birdsong, Albert King, Kelvin Ramsey, Darwin Cook, Mike Gaminsky, Michael Corrin, Bill Wallaby, Reggie Johnson, Clarence Walker, and last but not least, Mark Jones. Then the Denver Nuggets have Alex English, Kiki Vandeweghe, Dan Issel, Rob Williams, Danny Shays, T.R. Dunn, Howard Carter, Richard Anderson, Bill Hanslick, Kenny Dennard, Dave Robish, Anthony Roberts, Keith Edmondson, and then the Pacers have Clark Kellogg, Herb Williams, Butch Carter, Steve Stepanovich, George Johnson, Jerry Sitchin, Brooke Steppe, Kevin McKenna, Sidney Lowe, Jim Thomas, Leroy Combs, Tracy Jackson, and Granville Waiters. Going off with the Pistons, we have young Isaiah Thomas, followed with a Kelly Tripucka, a Bill Laimbeer, John Long, Vinnie Johnson, Terry Tyler, Kent Benson, Walker Russell, Cliff Livingston, Earl Curington, Ray Tolbert, David Thirdkill, Ken Austin, and lastly, Lionel Hollins. Then we have the Houston Rockets with Ralph Sampson, rookie, Robert Reed, Lewis Lloyd, Alan Leavell, Rodney McRae, Phil Ford, Caldwell Jones, Joe Bryant, Kobe's dad, Craig Elo, Chuck Nevitt, Terry Teagle, James Bailey, Major Jones, Wally Walker, and Elvin Hayes. And I don't know why, but this man needs to retire. We got the San Antonio Spurs with George Gervin, Artis Gilmore, Mike Mitchell, Gene Banks, John Lucas, Johnny Moore, Edgar Jones, Fred Roberts, Mark McNamara, Ron Brewer, John Paxson, Steve Lingenfelter, Daryl Lockhart, Dave Batson, and Bob Miller. Then we have the Suns with Walter Davis, James Edwards, Larry Nance, Maurice Lucas, Kyle Macy, Alvin Adams, Rod Foster, Rory White, Alvin Scott, Rick Roby, Paul Westphal, Charles Pittman, Mike Sanders, Johnny High. Then we have the Supersonics with Jack Sikma, Gus Williams, Tom Chambers, Al Wood, Danny Vrains, David Thompson, Reggie King, Fred Brown, Steve Halls, John Sunvold, Charles Bradley, Clay Johnson, Scooter McRae, and Steve Hayes. Then we have the Trailblazers with Tom Piotrowski, Audie Norris, Pete Verhoeven, Jeff Lamp, young Clyde Drexler, Wayne Cooper, Fat Lieber, Michael Thompson, Darnell Valentine, Calvin Nat, Kenny Carr, and Jim Paxson. Then the last team we have Golden State with Purvis Shorts, Joe Barry Carroll, Sleepy Floyd, Mickey Johnson, Larry Smith, Lester Connor, Mike Bratz, Don Collins, Darren Tillis, Russell Cross, Chris Egler, Pace Manning. And now, I do also want to throw out that after the 76ers, this is free agency. So a lot of these players are legends who I thought people would like to see in the NBA. So of course it's not realistic, but again, you could always take them out. But these were players that kind of retired either too early or had an injury and left. So we have Doug Collins, Brian Winters, Calvin Murphy, Charlie Scott, Antoine Carr, Dave Cowens, Rudy Tomjanovich, Jim Jones, Pete Maravich, Phil Chenier, Bob Dandridge, Mike Bantam, Wes Unseld, James Silas, Byron Beck, Walt Frazier, Henry Bibby, Campy Russell, Geoff Petrie, Jack Marin, Spencer Haywood, Larry Keenan, Louis Dampier, Mel Daniels, JoJo White, Bingo Smith, George McGinnis, Sidney Wicks, Rick Barry, Lou Hudson, Dave Bang, and Steve Mix, and Phil Jackson. And that is it. Of course, Eddie Mast is a real person, but other than that, and then the rest is just A-Trains. But yeah, that wraps up the fully accurate 1983 to 84 season rosters. If you think anything should change, let me know down in the comments. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out.
You did drop it, sound like Rick and Morty. Show me what you got. Ayy, big chefing in the kitchen, cooking up the rocks. Ayy.